Welcome to In Touch Crime Beat. I'm Officer Don with Fayette Commonwealth's Attorney Ray Larson.
Out of jail, okay? Don't mess up.
And those are the people, those repeat offenders, the ones that go to prison.
Let's say we're the #1 rated radio show in the whole country. Welcome to In Touch Crime Beat. I'm Officer Don with Fayette Commonwealth's Attorney Ray Larson. And Ray, we started off our conversation here before the show about what's going on in Florida, in Sanford, Florida, this shooting that everybody is aware of now. And, you know, the short and simple of this is you've got two sides to this story. You've got the Mr. Zimmerman, who is the shooter in this case, who claims that he was attacked by, Travon Martin, and as a result of that, he shot him. Now, the one issue that I was asking you about is the stand your ground law. I did hear Mr. Zimmerman's attorney this week state that the big controversy shouldn't be here when it comes to the stand your ground law in Florida, because it's not a stand your ground case. And what does stand your ground mean as far as your interpretation is concerned?
Well, what it says is if you're threatened, you don't have to retreat. You don't have to
Stand your ground.
Yeah, you don't have to run away. You don't have to try to get away from the situation. You can stand there and defend yourself. I'm not so sure it's a lot different than what the law has been for years and years and years in Kentucky, and that is if you feel as a person that you're under the threat of serious physical injury or death, that you have the right to use deadly physical force to protect yourself. Now, you're almost, it's a thin line. This stand your ground basically codifies what the Kentucky law has been all along, and that is if you feel like you're being threatened with serious physical injury or death, and it's in the mind of the person who is being threatened, then you can shoot and kill somebody or stab somebody. It's called self-defense or self-protection. And I haven't paid. I'm beyond honest with you. I haven't paid a lot of attention to what went on in this Florida case. And the reason is I got enough of this kind of stuff to deal with in Lexington. And the one thing I have seen happen here is as soon as it was reported, you had people jumping to conclusions, getting in front of the camera, talking about all of this, that, and the other. And it kind of, I knew that there's more to it than we're hearing, simply because I know how the police work. And the bottom line is that the police are in the, well, you know better than I do, you can't release all the information you have.
Not on an ongoing investigation, because as an investigator, you do not want this to be investigated in the public. You have to do your investigation, and then the public can scrutinize that at the conclusion of your investigation.
That's what juries are for, or grand juries are for.
But during the investigation, you have to be careful not to be swayed, first as an investigator, by public sentiment. You can't let that sway you at all. It has to be about facts. It has to be about witnesses. It has to be about physical evidence. And there's several questions you ask yourself as an investigator when you walk up to a scene like this. And little questions like, first of all, did the alleged shooter here have a legal right to be there? Did he have a legal right to carry the weapon? And did it look like, based on the evidence and witnesses, that he was defending himself? And you go the same with the person who's been shot. Did he have a legal right to be there? Was his actions threatening to the shooter? And were his actions to a level that the shooter was justified in pulling the trigger? And those are the initial things you look at, and then you have to get out the law and see how it applies. They look at the stand your ground law, they look at probable cause to make an arrest, and then all of that goes into play. And that ultimately, after you do your investigation, You're going to wind up consulting with the prosecutor's office at some point in the investigation, maybe even during the investigation, to keep them informed. And then when it's over, you meet with the prosecutors and you say, I'm either going to make an arrest in this case, or I don't know that it's appropriate for me to make an arrest. How about I hand it to you, and then you can make a decision as a prosecutor if you want to take it to the grand jury. That's the process.
Let me tell you, I can tell you about Kentucky. And particularly, let's talk a little bit about the Castle Doctrine, because the stand your ground is essentially kind of an offshoot.
Castle Doctrine is an offshoot of stand your ground.
That's right. And so, and the Castle Doctrine says that if somebody is attempting to get into your house or that sort of thing, you have the right to use deadly physical force. But that's been the law in Kentucky for a long time. Now, here's the issue that this whole Castle Doctrine, stand your ground rules have brought into the picture. They give legal standing to the person who has, in effect, shot somebody or killed somebody. And that is, if you don't have probable cause to believe they didn't have the right to do that, and you make an arrest, and it turns out that the police officer was wrong, guess what? He's civilly liable.
That's right.
That means, folks, that the person can sue him and recover.
What the stand your ground law does in Florida, and what the Castle Doctrine does here in Kentucky, is it says, look, police, before you make an arrest and charge someone with something just to react to to public sentiment, you better be sure.
You better be right
that this person wasn't trying to defend themselves. You better be sure, or you're liable. And it also really prevents. I don't know if it prevents, but it discourages prosecutors from automatically taking something to the grand jury.
I have to have the same. I have to have the same standard of proof to take it to the grand jury.
And the reason for that is, I think the legislators felt like they wanted to send a message to say, look, it's very easy when you have a case like this where someone's shot breaking into someone's house to say, well, you know what, I'll just take it to the grand jury and let them decide. Well, going to the grand jury, is very stressful for people and puts them through a lot. So it's just an extra buffer that they're saying, this is a message we want to send to the people of the state. If you shoot someone who breaks into your home and you're defending yourself, you're covered. That's the message that I feel like they were sending.
That's right.
And it's the same thing in Florida. That was the intent, is listen, if you shoot someone in self-defense and it's very clear that it was self-defense, you don't have to go through the arrest and you don't have to go through the grand jury process, because we're going to put an extra burden upon police and prosecutors before they do that. Now that's, there aren't many circumstances that burden is there. But this is one of them, and that's why the police have to be extra cautious. But there again, in this particular case, and I thought that was a strange move by Zimmerman's attorney, the shooter, to come out and say, hey, this is not a stand your ground case. This is self-defense. That in itself is odd, because if I was the attorney, I'd keep my mouth shut and just let things go where they're going to go.
Here's what's happened. It's gone. The whole case is out of the purview of just the court system now. It's become a national public event. Anytime you've got Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson piping up, then they can immediately turn it into a racial thing.
Sure.
And because that's how they make their living. But the other thing that I was really disappointed in is, what the hell does the President of the United States have any business piping up on this kind of thing? I didn't get that.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to the investigation. So let's assume police are called to the scene, and they're in the business of investigating, because the question that a lot of people have is, why didn't they make an arrest at the time, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, the first thing they do, as you said, they inquire.
Tune in to the following stations to hear the full episode.